Right, so summertime is upon us. There were more people last week because obviously we're talking about the government changes. Today's just a normal horror story one. One of the things that came up, which is related to the law that's coming into effect, that definitely is coming into effect because it's already been announced on October 26th this year, is the sexual harassment law, which is that if you have a claim against you for sexual harassment and you can't prove that you've taken steps to try and prevent it happening, then there's a 25% uplift against you in the award. So if they said, oh, she deserves 100,000, they would add an extra 25,000 onto that. And that's our campaign that we've been doing, is going out to all our clients, and some are on board and some are not quite there yet. To get them, you need to train your staff, certainly, but that's the easy bit. But in the golf clubs, you need to train the members, certainly the committees, the boards, the senior managers, so that they treat it seriously as well. So I'm going to cough. Nadia, if you take over.
You need to make sure that you are actually providing training. And we have worked with a few of our clients already to about, when they've had questions about training providers and that kind of thing. We've looked at some training providers. We can recommend some options for you. And actually, the training providers that we can recommend for you, they actually do other training as well. So not just this one. But it is really important that you get your staff, anyone on your board through this. I'm not saying put all your members through it, but I really want to say that. I realize it's not realistic, but with the amount of nonsense we see from members, it would be good to give it to them as an entry into the club. But hey, that's maybe wishful thinking.
Yes, I mean, that's maybe a way to do it, that everybody who says they want to join, great, do this 45-minute training, and that's part of your membership. Now, obviously, it's going to take a while to get through the other several hundred members that you've got, but it's like actually every little bit counts, because when there is an issue, you need the people who are ultimately making the decision to go, yes, this is serious, not go, oh, Bob, he's just a bit handsy. We'll just tell him not to do it. It's like, no, you won't. You will treat it properly. Okay. But the reason it came up again this week is because I've renewed my liability insurance, and it was a bit of a palaver, but we got there eventually because, you're obviously talking to somebody on the telephone who doesn't have all the information like you do, because I've been doing this every year for, 12 years. And it was interesting, though, at the end when he said, right, so this is how much it's going to be. This is what are the bits that are covered. And just to be aware, just so as you're aware, and not mentioned this before, he said, public liability information does not cover you for abuse, molestation, or any mistreatment. And I'm like, whoa, I've not heard that before. Not that I was intending to do that. Don't think I'm intending to do that. But it's just like, it is now, the insurance companies are now specifically excluding it from your insurance that you have to have. Now, they haven't said they're taking it out of the employer's liability insurance, but they are certainly taking it out of the public liability insurance. And you will be on your own with your insurance is not going to cover you. And the next step, I think, after this law comes in, is that renewals after that will take it out of the employer's liability insurance. It's like, if you do that, that's your problem, not ours. Don't come back to us for protection, because you're supposed to be taking steps. So it's interesting how just very quietly behind the scenes, the insurance companies are going, yeah, there's too many cases on this. We're not covering it anymore. They're not sending out big letters. So it's just when you renew those insurances, pay attention to that small print, because I'm going to say that's probably a very effective way for, society, the business society at least, to encourage employers to just do the right thing, because you're not covered if you don't do the right thing. Your choice, but we're not covering you. So there will be no, oh, Bob's just handsy. It's like, no, you're paying that all by yourself. And as we all know, tribunal claims, court claims, any of those, it's just the only people who win are the lawyers. I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands, if you're really unlucky, hundreds of thousands of pounds. as well as the reputational damage. So just don't do it, really. That's fine. I know I'm preaching to the converted here. I don't think there's anybody who's going to go, well, that's rubbish. I can do whatever I want. But just beware. Just beware. Okay. Nadia, Amy, what are your horror stories this week?
So I don't have a horror story. I just want to bring to your attention something that we have talked about before. So this is the allocation of tips. So it's called the Employment Allocation of Tips Act 2023. That's because there were some changes made to it in 2023, but there will now be further changes that will come into effect in October. So this is really, I'm just going to give you the highlights. We are going to break this down. We are going to create, a fact sheet and policy and the things that you need for this. But just giving you the high level overview of it is that you need to ensure that all tips are allocated and distributed to your workers in a fair and transparent manner. And this applies to tips that you, where the business receives the tips and the business exercises control in how those tips are allocated, which, is what should be done. So most of you. All tips need to be passed on to the workers without any deductions. So in the past, if you had something like service charge, for example, you could keep a percentage of that service charge in the business. You could actually keep as much of it as you wanted to. And you could also deduct a breakages fee and things like that from it. You won't be able to do that anymore. The full gratuity, the full service charge, the full tip has to go to the employees. The business can't hold anything back. That actually includes credit card fees. So if the tips are left on credit card and you're deducting those credit card fees off each tip before you distribute it, you won't be able to do that. The full tip must go to the employee. You have to comply with the code of practice on fair and transparent distribution of tips. And this is where our fact sheet and our policy will come into place. And you need to make payments of the tips by no later than the end of the following month after the tip was received. So if the tip was received on, today, then you need to pay employees that tip by the end of September. So I know a lot of our golf clubs have a process where they maybe pay quarterly for tips or twice a year or even once a year. They all put it in a pot and they pay it all out at Christmas. We have one or two clubs who do that. You won't be able to do that anymore. Tips will have to be paid out that sort of month in arrears and no later. You need to draft and maintain a written policy on how tips are allocated and dealt with. And this needs to be available for all of your staff. So this is something that we're going to give you that you'd be able to sort of add on to your handbook. And from next April, it will automatically be in your handbook because staff need to see this. You need to keep a record of all tips paid at your place of business and their allocation. So all the tips you've received, the allocation and the payout, you need to keep a record and evidence of that for up to 3 years. So those are the highlights of it. There is detail and it will come your way shortly from us, but just an overview, just a heads up. I know we've told you before, but this is coming. So if you need to review your policies, if you need to consult with people, if you need to talk to your boards, get on it. Amy.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today I am going to talk to you a little bit about the Working Time Directive. We've had a couple of queries on this recently, specifically around rest days. So we had a club who had a greenkeeper who was helping out, covering a bit of holiday, covering a bit of sickness, and he'd worked 10 days in a row. And obviously, as per the Working Time Directive, they need a rest break of 24 hours in a 7-day period or 48 hours in a 14-day period. Now, the club's question was, well, if we get him to work another 4 days, can I then give him 2 days off? No, absolutely not. No. The really key thing here is that it's a period, and those rest breaks and rest days need to take place within that period. So you need 24 hours rest break in a 7-day period. So they would work 6 days, have a rest break. And the same on the 14-day, they would work 12 days and then have 2 days as a rest break. You cannot make them work 7 days and then give them a day off, or make them work 14 days and then give them 2 days off. And then also just a gentle reminder as well, under the Working Time Directive, you cannot work more than 48 hours a week. That is averaged over a 17-week period, but it's just something to be really conscious of. We've had a case recently where we've had someone who's actually on a 56-hour-a-week contract, but we've got no opt-out on record. So it's just something to be very, very aware of, especially if you've got any historic contracts hanging around.
Great. The other thing that's come up this week is a settlement agreement. And so I'm just trying to preemptively make you aware of this, is that if you have, because we do a lot of settlement agreements. I think we did 6 back in July. We've already done two, 3 this month already. But certainly in the golf clubs, it's usually with longer serving staff. They will have protected characteristics, but it's usually because they've been there for a long time. This case was a head greenkeeper who'd been there for 31 years, and he was kicking off because he felt that his job was being taken over by his second in command, which was not the case at all. But he wasn't doing his job, and the thing is, because he'd never been managed, we didn't have anything to compare it to. We did come to an agreement because he really didn't want to come back to work, and he was off with stress at work, which is, as we all know, not a disability. You don't have to make any reasonable adjustments. It's just that the solicitor that he was using was a little bit of a rookie, and he was like, this is awful, and you've got to make reasonable adjustments. Like, we don't. And he's only gone off because he's now been invited to a gross misconduct disciplinary, because we've now found out all these things he's not been doing. There you go. But it was just to say, if you have staff who are with you or have been with you for more than 10 years, make sure you are performance managing them, particularly if they're department heads. Make sure you know what is going on in those departments. Make sure those department members have a chance to speak to somebody independent, where it won't get back to the manager, so that they can tell you the reality of being managed by that person. Because inevitably, when we have, and it's always the head greenkeepers, I'm going to say it's never F&B where this is a secret, but the head greenkeeper will have his little empire, and they are often, not always, they're obviously good ones, but they won't let their team talk to anybody else. In this case, they wouldn't let their team go up to the club. They wouldn't let them talk to any of the committee who came in down and said hi. They're like, you have to say nice stuff. If you tell them what I'm doing, you are so going to regret it. Actual, not even just bullying, but actually threatening physical harm to them. And we've had, since this person's been off with stress at work, and we're now getting a settlement, we should have it signed, hopefully, touch wood, this week, that the team, the people who've been longest in the team, and there's people that have been there for 30, 45 years, they've been coming up to the committee member who's been dealing with this and saying, thank you so much for making him not do this job anymore, because the atmosphere with him in was toxic. It was really awful. It was cliquey. He never did anything. He was always sort of, be in, and he wouldn't talk to you, wouldn't even say good morning, and then he'd go away. And all you get from him was criticism. There was never any praise, and he wouldn't let you do any training and all of these things. But they couldn't say anything beforehand, because then the manager, the head greenkeeper, would find out, and then there would be repercussions. Now, you're not allowed to victimize somebody, but that's a legal thing. That doesn't change the actual fact that their life is going to become hell if the head greenkeeper finds out about this. So if you can proactively start having those conversations with, I'm going to say even over 5 years service, if they've been 5 years managing a department, make sure that the department people have a chance to talk freely about what the reality is before you get 31 years down the line. And you realise that people have been working in an awful environment for years, if not decades, but didn't feel they could say anything and didn't feel they could leave because they didn't think they could get a job elsewhere. And that was what it came down to. People had started there when they were like 16. They didn't really have any qualifications. They really liked the club, but they just didn't think that they could go anywhere else. Whereas I know for once we're in sort of professional or office roles, we're like, well, just quit and just go. That's not always an option. So it's just let's try and protect the team from people who get a little bit too concerned with empire building. So good. So are there any questions today? Dawn?
Hi, I just want to check my understanding with something. Employer gets 28 days, employee gets 28 days holiday. He rarely wants to take his holiday. His line manager would like him to work more. So what they've sort of agreed between them is he would take 20 days holiday and he would pay him for 8 days holiday. And I said, I'm not sure if there is, I mean, I know sometimes obviously we can, put some holiday over to the next year if we decide at our discretion, that they weren't able to because of business ones.
Not really.
Things really.
Not really. So if it's just a 28 days, you can't actually carry over any of that. It's if you were giving him, say, 25 days plus bank holidays, you could carry over that 5 days extra.
Yeah.
But you can't carry over the other stuff. And that's why it's got to be planned in.
Yeah, because ours is 28, including the bank holiday.
Yeah, exactly. So that can't be carried over. So I'm not sure.
Statutory.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying that can't be, I'm agreeing with Caroline, it can't be carried over because it's a statutory amount.
Yeah. So has he got to take it?
Yes.
He has got to take it. He can't say, I don't want to take 5 days. I'd rather you pay me. He has got.
No, that's not an alternative. No. And the slightly medium term consequence of that is we don't know when that employee is going to turn around and say, you paid me out, which is illegal. And now I've got mental health issues because you've infringed on working time regulation. And we've had this again in golf clubs. Golf clubs are just a wonderful business opportunity. I'm just saying there's no end of fun in golf clubs. But that's the point, that you don't know when he's going to turn around and blame you for something. And if you have paid them out, that is illegal. You would lose. And what it's going to be is a more expensive settlement agreement. So it's like, actually, let's look at what we've got this year, right? And you tell him when he's going to have it. So I absolutely understand that the manager wants him to work. I don't understand about the working more, because he's working 40 hours a week. Is that right? So there must be quieter periods. I don't know how busy it is in the summer for you.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a nightmare, really. He's just one of these people that doesn't want to take holidays. He's like, and I have been saying to him, no, you need to switch off. You need to not do that, and it's like, oh, when I come back, and I've got to catch up. Well, that's for us to manage his work. Yeah. It's an accounting job.
Right. Okay. So,
and I know, obviously, as well, from your experience, your advice is like, you really need to get accounting people off, just in case they're covering things up as well. I do. Yeah, I've heard you say that before.
And there's another concern, actually. The fact that he's had this conversation, that him and his manager have had this conversation. So really what's happened here is his manager has verbally altered his terms and conditions in that conversation because they've agreed to do it this way.
They haven't necessarily agreed. They've just had a little chat.
I just had a chat. So I just think that his manager needs to go back to him and say, actually, you know what? I've looked at it and you can take holiday here, here and here. Yeah. That really works for the business. We really need to do that. And then write to him a follow-up email to say, we discussed that you would take holiday on so and so. and that all your holiday every year should be taken or something like that, just to cover himself in case this guy one day brings this conversation up.
So it doesn't matter whether you want it or you're not. If you don't decide to choose it, we're going to say you're taking those off. That's it. But we've got to absolutely legally instill he takes 28 days off.
Yes,
and you can tell them when. Sorry, Caroline.
No, I was going to say I would be more adamant than Nadia that I would actually say we have identified when you could take holidays. So we are telling you now you are on holiday this week. You are not to come into work. If you come into work, that is a disciplinary offence. So there's no work, there's no remote access. Somebody else does need to cover, maybe the accountant. I don't know whether you have an external accountant, certainly for auditing or something, who could bring in somebody part-time just to cover any emergencies that week. But like we said, to see if there's anything in there. And that's why it needs to be also not just one day at a time, because then things can be covered up. To have that and say that, and then it's in there. And if he says, well, I don't want to go on those dates, okay, you need to come back to me by the end of tomorrow with the actual dates that you are going to do. Otherwise, that what I've given you will stay in place.
Yeah.
I don't mind. You can book your own dates, but you know.
Yeah. Perfect.
Just remember, if you do tell them when they have to take holiday, you have to give double the time notice. Just don't forget that little clause.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're going to force him on holiday.
Yes, exactly.
Force him on holiday.
Life. Yeah.
But it's also related to in health and safety. It's about protective equipment, because again, there's a lot of people saying, well, they don't want to wear the hats because it makes them hot and sweaty. Well, go and buy new hats that are cooler. There will be them out there, but they have to wear them. Oh yeah, but if they sign something saying it's okay, it's like, no, because there is nothing they can sign ever that gets you out of your responsibility. That's the problem. It's the same thing with a holiday. There is nothing they can sign that would say it's okay, I've agreed to this. So the point is we have to assume the worst. And it's not a bad thing to make somebody do a holiday, is it? It's like, maybe we need to get you a part-time helper who could do that. Oh no, I don't want that. And then that's yet another red flag. It's like, why do you not want that? We're giving you more resource. Why would you not? Oh, okay, we're definitely going to need to put you on holiday for a month now while we look at all the
yeah. Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, Tony, have you got a question today?
Yes.
Yeah. You're unmuted.
Yeah, good. In relation to statutory sick pay, we've had an employee that's been off for the full term on statutory sick pay. She's made a request to return to work in the second week of September. Obviously, we've been keeping in touch with the employee over the months, and she's come into the golf club a few times. She shattered her ankle at home. She fell down the stairs. So she had pins and sort of framework all on her leg, etc. Looking to return to work because obviously the statutory sick pay runs out. But she said that she would be unable to do some of her duties because she was a cleaner, like climbing stairs in the hotel, etc. Could she go on to light duties? Now, can we do that? Let her come back if she's fit to return to work on a reduced hourly basis on light duties? Any advice?
Nadia, do you want to get this one?
Yes. So we're actually dealing with a case very similar to this right now, where someone is wanting to come back and they need to come back on light duties, and some of their it's difficult in their role to find them light duties. But in this case, you will need to. So I mean, if it requires a return to work conversation, first of all, to understand what you can do and what you can't do. Go through a job description, work out which of the tasks she can do, which she can't do. Also talk to her about how many hours she's wanting to come back on that phased return. She might say to you, I only want to come back, I don't know, 1 day a week and then 2 and so on. And you would only pay her for the time that she's coming back. The rest of the time will be sick, but as she has used all her SSP, it will basically be unpaid. So you would only pay her for, if she's taking a 6-week sort of phased return and every week she's working a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, doing a bit more of her tasks, then you'd slowly be increasing that money back up to her normal pay. But it is really, there's a heavy responsibility on employers in this position to try and make it work, because the employee is trying to come back to work. They're saying, I can't do exactly everything I need to do, or I can't work as much as I used to, but I'm willing to build it up, and I'm willing to come to work, and I'm willing to do something. So there really is quite a heavy responsibility on the employer to try and make that work and help that employee integrate back into the business. No judge is going to like to hear that the employee says, I tried to come back to work. They told me I couldn't come back because there wasn't enough light duties to keep me busy, or I couldn't, it was no use me coming back 2 hours a week to start, things like that. A judge wants to hear that you made every effort to help this employee return to work.
Good, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, good. So we're hoping for better weather over the next few days. I think beginning of next week, it's supposed to be nice. I'm going to be working remotely from Berlin next week. I'm in the hotel next to the Brandenburg Gate, just literally, 10 meters from where the BBC commentary box was during the Euros. That's right next to that. So I'm going to be working very hard during the day, and 5 o'clock out the door, comedy, beer gardens, just, it's a hard life, but somebody's got to do it. So I'll be reporting for you next week about how life is in Berlin. And I'm hoping that you don't have any questions that you need before then, but otherwise give us a call and we'll see you next week. All right, everybody, take care. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want a free tribunal audit of your employment contract and handbook, click the link in the description below.